Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. First off, a very happy 4th of July to all my American friends. Hope you all get to enjoy the fireworks and the barbecue with families and friends while observing safety and social distancing norms. Anyway, I'm glad a lot of you found my building blog series on the internal styles useful. Really appreciate the feedback. Also, many of you have asked me about the different type of forces and power involved in the practice of internal styles. Starting today, I'd like to talk about the topic for each of the 3 internal styles, Xingyi being the first. If it's your first time on my channel, I highly recommend you watch my intro videos on the internal styles and my lecture series playlist. Links are in the description. Alright, so let's get started. Before we dive into the details, let me make one important thing clear. Power and force means 2 different things and not interchangeable. I will explain this more later, but for now, suffice it to say that power and force are not the same. Please keep in mind that there are many ways to categorize force and power in Xingyi. We will explain this based on Xingyi's 5-element theory and practice. In the future, I will explain it further based on today's topic. Topics covered in today's video include 5-element theory. Second, 5-element fist in Xingyi. Third, different stages of 5-element practice. Fourth topic, demonstration. 5 topics, takeaways. Before we begin, I'd like to focus on the fact that you cannot understand Xingyi without understanding 5-element theory. 5-element theory forms the basis of Xingyi, so please pay attention to it. Also, quite a few other styles use the 5-element theory, though possibly in different ways. So if you practice any of those other styles, you will find this knowledge relevance there this as well. First topic, 5-element theory. Xing, or 5 elements, is a Chinese term used to express a conceptual scheme in the development of Chinese thought. People often call it 5 process, 5 phrases. Those are metal, or 金 in Chinese, water, 水, wood, 木, fire, 火, earth, 土. For the remainder of this video, I will only use the term 5 elements since that is the term commonly used in Xingyi, and also that's the term most people are familiar with. The 5 elements are dynamic, interdependent modes or aspects of the universe's ongoing existence and development. The driving force behind the 5 elements are yin and yang. This is why very often people call the system yin-yang 5 elements. The ancient Chinese used 5 types of ever-changing material forces in contrast to other systems like those of the ancient Greeks, which used 4 unchanging building blocks of matter. This concept has existed for more than 3,000 years. However, before the Han Dynasty, 202 BCE to 220 CE, the 5 elements concept was more of a way to describe natural process than a well-defined school of thought. Then, during the regime of the Han Dynasty, 5 elements evolved from the mere thought into a distinct philosophical tradition called Xing or 5-element school. From then on, the Xing or 5-element system has been applied not only to the explanation of natural phenomena, but also has been extended to describe social norms, aesthetics principles, and the political structure, among others. Today, the 5 elements concept is used virtually in every aspect of daily life, including medicine, morality, feng shui, cooking, military strategy, cosmology, and technology. It is an inseparable part of Chinese life. Now, let's dive into the relationships between the 5 elements. The foremost important concept in 5 elements is its cyclical change among each other through the process of generation and destruction among the 5 phrases. In Chinese, the generation process is called Sheng, synonymously with birth, creation, and nourishment, among others. While the destruction process is called Ke, which means restrainment, restriction, and subdual, among others. Therefore, in the process of generation, wood feeds fire, fire creates earth, earth bears metal, metal carries water, water nourishes wood. Likewise, for the process of destruction, wood passes earth, earth absorbs water, water quenches fire, fire melts metal, metal chops wood. And like I mentioned earlier, yin and yang are the fundamental forces that cause both the generative and destructive process. Also, bear in mind that those are not only the 2 processes. Each pair of elements also exhibit inverse relationships of destruction between them. For example, when fire is too strong, and the normal relationship between water and fire will change. Instead of water that can distinguish fire, it became the fire that evaporates water. Instead of metal over harvest wood, it becomes wood dulls metal. Instead of wood depleting the earth, it becomes earth rots wood. Instead of fire vaporizing metal, it becomes that metal that de-energizes fire. This is the situation where the balance of 5 elements has been changed due to some extreme factors. Also, another part of the application of 5 elements in terms of inverse generation is the theory that in order to strengthen one element, you can strengthen and nourish the prior elements or its mother elements first. For example, to make the wood element stronger, then you can nourish the water elements since it is considered as the mother of the wood. To strengthen the fire, you can nourish the wood since wood is mother of the fire. To strengthen the water, you can nourish the metal. To strengthen the earth, you can improve the fire element first. 5-element theory has become a fundamental part of Chinese philosophy, and due to its ubiquity in Chinese culture, it was eventually adapted by Chinese martial arts system, including Shaolin and, of course, the internal styles. Owing to its long history and widespread usage throughout Chinese culture, five-element theory has many interpretations and applications. But we will limit our discussion of the five elements to keep it relevant to the internal styles, especially Xing Yi. The generative and destructive cycle of the five elements detailed earlier can best be visualized with the diagram. In this picture, the blue arrows represent generation. For example, wood generates fire, fire generates earth, and so on. So the pentagon formed by the blue arrows represent the generative process. On the other hand, the red arrows represent destruction. For example, wood destroys earth, earth absorbs water, and so on. So the pentagram formed by the red arrows represents the destructive process. Now, let's talk about how the five-element theory is applied to Xing Yi. Second topic, five-element fist in Xing Yi. In China, we typically just call it five elements, instead of five-element fist as we see very often in English translation, or 五行 in Mandarin. In Xing Yi, those five elements are metal, which is P, water, 钻, wood, 崩, fire, 炮, earth, 横. Normally, we follow the generative circle in listing those practices. As I mentioned earlier, force and power are two different concepts in the context of the internal styles. In traditional martial art, we use different terms to indicate these two words. This video will follow the traditional way of defining and naming the term force and power. In martial art practice, the word 劲 has the same connotation as the word power in English. The word 力 means force. In martial art practice, we focus on the term 劲 more than 力, since 力 or force is an element of 劲 or power. I always tell my students that without motion, force or 力 alone will be useless in self-defense. A martial artist practices both 劲 and 力, but in application, 劲is more important than 力, since fast movement will strengthen the impact of the 力 way more than a slow movement or stationary force in general. To make this easier to understand, let us consider the concepts of power and force as used in physics. In physics, power is the product of force and velocity. Similarly, in martial art, 劲 or power is the combination of 力 or force and speed. Before moving forward, let's watch a demonstration of Hebei style 5 elements that I posted back in 2007. In this video, I emphasized the hard force of Xingyi practice. So, what does Xingyi 5 practice provide to us? After years of practice and teaching, I have concluded that the 5 elements fist help to practice 5 types of forces. Here, I intentionally use the term force instead of power. The reason is that through slow motion practice, we try to align the muscle, the structure, the breathing, the mind together in the process of being able to generate and transfer the Xingyi force naturally and smoothly. Then, with increased speed, we will be able to generate the power, and the power will have its impact on our opponents in self-defense situations. Along with the point of application and the magnitude, the direction of application is the key to distinguish between the Xingyi 5 forces. Now, let's analyze them based on the direction of application. P, the metal fist, is applied forward and downward. Zuan, the water fist, is applied forward and upward. Beng, the wood fist, is applied forward. Pao, the fire fist, is applied diagonally at an angle of 45 to 60 degrees from the forward direction. I call it the inward diagonal direction for convenience. And Heng, the earth fist, is first applied diagonally at an angle of 45 degrees and then drills outward to an angle about 30 degrees from the forward direction. I call it the outward diagonal direction for convenience. Of course, there are 5 different variations for each element, so in total there are 25 variations. In this video, we will only talk about the standard 5-element fist. My advice to practitioners is that your primary focus should be on the 5 forces, speed, and other essential aspects to generate the 5 powers. Do not focus on applications from the get-go. Skills with applications will naturally follow. I can't emphasize enough the importance of 5-element fist in Xingyi practice. To tell you the truth, I judge a Xingyi practitioner's skill primarily by their demonstration of the 5 elements. That's why I highly recommend you practice the 5 elements every time you practice Xingyi, regardless of what other routines or movements are on your agenda. Like I mentioned before, there is an inner relationship of the 5 fists based on the process of generation and destruction. However, I use the following sequence in teaching. First, P or metal, followed by Beng or wood. Later comes Zuan or water, followed by Pao or fire, and finally Heng or earth. Now, that may make you think, why P and Beng first? That's because these two fists build a strong foundation for further practice. It is not only based on the tradition, but also and more importantly, based on many masters' teaching experience, including myself as well. Now, let me ask you, do you think we have to apply the aforementioned generative or destructive process when we practice Xingyi? In my experience, it is not that necessary. There are two 5 elements linking routines in Hebei style based on the generative and destructive process. Those are not the same as the 5 elements linking form that you typically see demonstrated. But practicing those linking forms is totally up to the practitioner. Suffice is to say that this approach in particular will not make any significant differences to your practice. Let me ask you another question before we move on to the next topic. Do you think we have to follow the relationships in the destructive process of the 5 elements in martial application? The answer is no, because when it comes to application, we should focus primarily on our instincts. In real-life situations, there's no time for you to figure out which elements to use in order to counter another element, but your instinct will help you make the right choice. Also, in practice, many elements can be used to counter any other elements. At the end of the day, practicing the 5-element fist such that they become instinctive or second nature should be the goal instead of overanalyzing the relationship between elements in terms of martial applications. Now, let's elaborate the 5 elements practice a bit more in the next topic. Topic 3. Different stages of 5 elements practice. We have already expressed the importance of this set of training, including its objective and order in practice. In this topic, I will not talk about different types of forces in terms of its characteristics, which are traditionally expressed with the term Ming, An, Hua, or obvious force, hidden force, and neutralizing force. Instead, I will continue to focus on the 5 elements and will elaborate this concept a step further. In Xingyi practice, we use imagery to describe the final result. That is the common approach found in many other martial arts. For example, we use 12 animal forms to describe 12 sets of techniques and skills. So, in the case of 5 elements, what are the imageries? Traditionally, metal fist is like an axe. The wood fist is like an arrow. The water fist is like lightning. The fire fist is like an explosion. The earth fist is like a flying cannonball. Now, pay close attention to what I will say next. Eventually, practitioners should be able to express the 5 elements through the 5 forces. Now, what does that mean? Well, in the beginning, we learn the movements of the 5 fists based on the concept of 5 elements. Next, we practice the 5 forces through the 5 fists. The final step is to be able to express the nature of the 5 elements through the 5 fists, which sound like the inverse of the initial stage. As you would expect, this is an advanced topic called 五行本力, which literally translates to 5 elements nature force. 5 elements nature force is an expression for the nature of the 5 forces according to the connotations of their associated elements. Metal force. Practitioner's body becomes as strong and as solid as metal. Water force. practitioner's movement and force is as dynamic and as fluid as water. Wood force, the whole body structure is solid yet flexible, like a tree. Fire force, the martial practice of Fa Li is powerful like an explosion. Earth force, the whole body and stance are as stable as the mountain. Now, what will be a still higher stage of practice? Some classic Xingyi documents written by Li Cunyi, Liu Dianzhen, and other masters in some books such as Xing Yi Quan Shu Jue Wei or Discover Subtlety of Xingyi written by Liu Dianzhen calls the highest stage Wu Xing He Yi or union of 5 elements. It is the stage in which every single movement possesses the nature of all 5 elements. That means each movement is simultaneously strong, solid, stable, dynamic, explosive. This harmonious union of the 5 elements should be one of the main long-term goals of any serious Xingyi practitioner. More than a decade ago, I wrote an article to introduce this concept in China. I used a set of short proverbs to make them easier to remember. I will first say them out in Mandarin and then provide the English translation. Those proverbs are 五行生五权，五权言五力，五力显五行，五行在合一。Their English equivalents would be 5 elements create 5 fists. 5 fists create 5 forces. 5 forces express 5 elements. 5 elements unite as one. I hope this gave you a better understanding of the 5 elements in the context of Xingyi. Of course, do not worry if the content sounds difficult to understand. I recommend you revisit this content often during your Xingyi journey. With regular practice, I'm sure that seemingly mysterious concept today will become a matter of fact tomorrow. Topic 4. Demonstration. Hello, today I'd like to show you one simple movement. It is the single exercise of the earth fist or Heng fist in Xingyi 5 elements. Very often when you see people practice this one, they just move like this. That's okay, but not good enough. In practice, especially when we practice the Heng, we should focus on the opening and closing motion of the chest. The opening and closing motion of the chest is the key to generate the force. Also, during the opening and closing time, we will be able to create the momentum which is used in have a much better force. So let me show this. So open, close, then extend. So look at here, okay? Open, close, then release. Let me try this again. I try to do the angle. So 1, 2. So in the future, when you practice the Heng fist or the earth fist, pay attention to this movement or to this small motion. It will make your practice much more powerful. Thank you. Topic 5. Takeaways. First, 5-element theory is a fundamental part of Chinese philosophy, and it has been ubiquitously in Chinese life and culture. Second, Xing Yi borrowed this idea from the philosophical concept of 5 elements and realized it through 5 kinds of physical practice in order to achieve a specific practical objective. 3. 5 elements fist form the most important part of Xingyi practice. Those should not be neglected no matter what the practitioner's skill level. 4. The highest level of practice aims to unite the natures of 5 elements in a single movement in terms of speed, force, power, and direction. That concludes today's discussion on the 5 elements of Xingyi. Thank you for watching. See you next time and enjoy your practice.